Hey there, welcome to a new album review, and today we have Opiate by Tool, which is actually the first EP they released, and I was actually very interested about it because lately I've been hearing quite a bit of Lateralus, because I've already reviewed it, and I guess it's one of those albums that I just kept hearing, and it's a really good album, honestly. The more I listen to it, the more I appreciate it, so I'm glad I eventually checked that out, but today I wanted to check out more Tool, and why not start by the beginning? Now, this EP is actually very interesting because it has 6 songs, and the EP is less than like half an hour long. It's 6 minutes, something like that. And technically, it should be 7 songs long, but we'll get to it. And eventually, interestingly, the best part about this is it's very focused on the funky part, like the grungy part, if you will, of Tool, right? So in Lateralus, for example, it was sort of this mix. I talked about it being really funky, right? And it was really funky, and it was sort of this funkiness mixed with the prog, right? And them like allowing a lot of the songs to breathe and a lot of the riffs to breathe and everything, right? And here it's sort of interesting in the regard that for the most part it's all that, right? It's just the funkiness, the cool riffs and everything, especially the bass here is really great, because the thing is, Tool didn't exactly start as a prog metal band, they just kind of became that. When I was listening to this EP, I was actually getting reminded a lot of bands like Alice in Chains, right? Like the style is very similar, here you do have a couple of songs here and there that have moments where you sort of do have a little bit more of a, everything is toned down before coming back up again, which will become sort of a signature style moment in a lot of Tool songs, at least in Lateralus from what I remember. So it's very interesting that here you kind of already can hear some of the little, I guess, modalities that the Tool are using, but it's much more focused on the funky style of it, right? The grungy style. Again, like I'm making the comparison to Alice in Chains because it does quite a lot sound like them. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it just sounds a lot like Alice in Chains. It's very that registry of music, which I found very fascinating, because I praise Tool's funkiness and whatnot, but I did not expect that they started with that, right? I always thought that that's, sure, it was a style, but it was a style that decided to incorporate into prog more so than vice versa, right? So it's actually the other way around, where they started with this more funky style, and then they eventually sort of incorporated prog into their style and went into, I guess, a different direction, and a better one in my opinion, because I definitely do enjoy the prog side of Tool much more than I enjoy anything else. So I gotta say, the EP is really good, but I am missing that sort of breath that you can have during Tool songs, because a lot of Lateralus has these moments where you can just sort of stop for a moment, relax before, the song gives you space to breathe, right? And I think that's actually a very underrated thing in music. I think that's something that a lot of musicians don't actually do, which is giving you space to actually assimilate what you heard and sort of catch up to the song. Because sometimes when you have stuff that is so technical in nature, right, or is so out there, if you don't give people the time to catch up to it and sort of digest it, you kind of lose them in a way, right? So Tool are really good at doing that, and then they sort of have these, combination with the funkiness that they provide, and create a very, very unique sound, right? This EP lacks that sort of allowing you to breathe, because it's far more focused on the funkiness side of it. Now, the last song in the album is 8 minutes long, 8 minutes 30. That is because this comes from an era where I've seen a few bands do this, and it's something that personally I don't enjoy, but I get it back then, whatever, different times. But essentially, the last song is actually 2 songs. You have a normal song, and then you have a little bit of silence, and then you have a quote-unquote even track, right, which is a different song, so technically the EP should actually be 7 songs, not 6. As a whole, though, I would say, and this is a bit of criticism that I have to throw at this EP, a lot of the songs end up sounding sort of the same. Like, you don't have a distinction between them in a way, right? Like, it's very funky and all of that, but it's sort of the thing where it's like, as soon as you've heard the vibe of one, you kind of heard the vibe of all of them. I'm not saying they're bad, they're enjoyable for sure, but it does stand in a sort of, point where perhaps I don't know, like it just doesn't really push me to like if you want to listen purely to the funky side of Tool, I think this is a really great EP. But I do think that it's lacking a lot of the things that albums usually have, a lot of the diversity that albums usually have, right? Like, and even the diversity that some EPs have, like Jar of Flies by Alice in Chains does have quite, a diverse cast of songs and a diverse take on the genre, which is actually really interesting, because it's an EP, but it's quite a long one. It's considered one of the best EPs when it comes to like metal or I guess rock or whatever, right? Like these EPs just doesn't have that quality, I would say, which is fine. Obviously, you can't expect the first work of a band to be like amazing, and even then, like that aside, the bass work, especially on this album, and like the funkiness that from Tool is here present, and it's like really good in my opinion. But with that being said, I am glad that they changed paths. I am glad that they went more to the prog route, because clearly when you combine this funkiness with that build up that they have in songs, with that allowing you to breathe, with a story that it's more coherent, and there's sort of this journey that you go on, right? I do feel that is just much better. I think that it's much more diverse, and I think that it showcases a much more unique sound, and a sound that in my opinion is much more worth listening to than just the funky parts, right? With that being said, the funky parts are fine, but again, I did not find like that sort of diversity perhaps that I've known in Lateralus, where you just like every song sort of, sure, you can make an argument that every song sounds the same, but they all offer something unique to you, right? So in terms of my vibe meter, I would say these EPs, like honestly, I'm feeling a 8 out of 10, honestly, like again, it's not my favorite, I guess, but it's still pretty good. It's not as good as perhaps some other grunge bands, but it's definitely very good, and I think it's for a band like Tool, honestly, and especially if you don't expect Tool, I definitely think it's an album they should definitely listen to.